My name is John Jeffcoat. I'm the director and co-writer of Outsourced. I'm a filmmaker based in Seattle, Washington. In the headlines of the news, I was hearing a lot about Microsoft workers being outsourced, about Indians being brought over to the US and Americans having to train their own replacements. And at some point I put my experiences traveling in India and Nepal together and mixed it with this idea of outsourcing and the idea of sending this guy from Seattle to India to train his own replacement. After the release of the film, we were approached by people in LA about actually adapting the movie into a half-hour comedy series. And we've sold the pitch to NBC, and we've been developing a half-hour pilot, basically a global workplace comedy. And we're working with Ken Kwapis, who directed the pilot for The Office TV show, and we're hoping eventually this may actually come to be, but about 2 years in development so far. I always felt really strong about the subject matter. It was a big question as to whether a film without any mainstream actors and with a majority of an Indian cast, all in English, would be something that could catch on, because it kind of was a strange thing. It wasn't a traditional mainstream comedy, but at the same time it wasn't a foreign film. It really is very mainstream in its sort of construction and its subject matter, but at the same time it's it is in a different country, and it's dealing with a lot of cultural issues that many Americans may not be aware of if they haven't traveled much. But I hope that it opens people's minds to other cultures and encourages and excites people about the idea of traveling and kind of experiencing what exists outside the borders of our country. I think the hope for the film is, definitely to entertain people, but also in doing so, get people to think a little bit more about the world being bigger than what's right in front of us. Being thrown into such a foreign culture, it's amazing when you come back how much better you understand where you're from. And you get a much better appreciation for everything you've got, and also you might have some ideas about how you might want to change your life and do things a little differently, and that the way we live here isn't the only way to live. I think it's just really important to get out of this country just so that you can have that separation and kind of see it with fresh eyes when you return. When I tell people I made a film, it's called Outsourced, they immediately assume it's a political documentary. And then when I explain, actually it's a romantic comedy, it's really hard for people to kind of grasp that idea. And it is a bit strange trying to put outsourcing into this romantic comedy sort of structure, but for me, I really feel like I didn't want to preach to a really specific group that would be interested in seeing this foreign film about an American who goes to India. I wanted to try to reach the people who wouldn't necessarily usually watch a movie about India or want to go there. I wanted to build it into this. George and my co-writer George Wing and I really were, one of the challenges was, how do you make a mainstream comedy but bring in some more serious social topics and interesting characters and a whole different culture that Americans may not be familiar with. And it was a nice challenge to present us with it. And I think also that comedy is a great way to bring up a difficult subject and make it more palatable so people will get through from beginning to end. And then afterwards, after they've had a good laugh, maybe they'll start thinking about what else they saw in that movie, and maybe they learned a few things without realizing it. It's been funny because the movie has really been embraced by business schools and universities and a lot of different organizations, educational and political groups, and to really open these discussions up about globalization and outsourcing. And I don't pretend to be a professional or what do you call it? A scholar. Yeah, a scholar on the topic of outsourcing or globalization. What I believe is that I have a good understanding of cultural differences, and I have an ability to pick up nuances in different cultures and sort of an understanding of people. And I did my research as far as, globalization and outsourcing was just sort of the skeleton I was able to string my characters and my structure onto. And I think a lot of my research initially came from listening to public radio and Googling stories about outsourcing and reading, and then eventually making contact with actual trainers, people who go to call centers in India and train these people who are really there, and then actually go myself. I went to call centers, spent some time with the people there, so it was more really getting there and getting into the culture, spending time traveling in India, spending time traveling in the surrounding areas, and getting a feel for what I saw there, as opposed to just reading stuff on the internet and making a story up around that. But so that's where, I think, my experience really comes from. It's giving a little bit more of a human face to this sort of idea of what outsourcing and globalization is. It's always interesting to see where a film's going to bring you, and I had no idea I'd be. This is one of several schools I've been speaking at now, and it was never anything I would have imagined doing when we made the movie. But it's been great for me, because to me, one of the greatest decisions I ever made in my life was deciding to go abroad in my junior year, and not only that, but not to go to Australia or England or some of these places where it's sort of a default place to go, but actually challenging myself to go somewhere where I didn't think they'd be speaking any English, or something. Try to find a culture that was so far removed from where I was that would force me into a very different place. And it was such an amazing experience. Any chance I get to try to inspire other students to take advantage of that opportunity to spend a semester abroad, to get out of this country and experience something that they can take back and really see where they came from, with fresh eyes, I think is a great thing. And I love getting the opportunity to try to inspire people to do that, because I just think the country I really, again, back 8 years ago or so, we went through a period where I really felt like our country had blinders on, and we just were so unaware of anything that was going on outside of this country, and not even recognizing that we aren't the only culture that exists on this planet. There's many others, and there's many other ways to live other than the ways we're told to live. And we also live in a country where we are so heavily marketed upon that it's great to actually remove yourself from that sort of mechanism that exists here, and be able to it's kind of set yourself free to kind of come back and reevaluate who you are, what you want to do with your life. So I don't know, it's really exciting for me to come and try to inspire students to hopefully get out there and explore the world before they settle into their career path. Well, the world's getting so much smaller, and like it or not, you're going to be interacting with people all over the world, whether it's from India, or Thailand, or China, or England. And I think you're just going to be that much better equipped if you've had the chance to go and see some of these places, and be able to understand and relate to somebody, and understand with an understanding of where they're coming from, and that things are different. You don't expect to go to dinner at Olive Garden when you're in Bombay. It's you have to open yourself up and let yourself go and try things, and you're going to have a miserable time, and you're going to have a fantastic time. And it's kind of dealing and being able to work your way through this sort of dueling love-hate relationship that you'll have when you experience other cultures. And it's hard, and it's really fulfilling too, but it's a great challenge, and I think you usually will come out better for it. If you want to find out more about Outsource, go to outsourcethemovie.com.